Hello, everyone, and welcome to another American Scouser Podcast morning coffee. And I have it right here in a very suitable grumpy mug. I am grumpy because, well, first of all, it's Monday. Second of all, as you can see, there's way too much of me on the screen and not enough of somebody else. Mecca is not with us this morning. We're hoping he is going to be able to work out a schedule so we can continue our morning comedy moving forward and so that you guys don't get just stuck with me. But the funny thing is, of all days that Mecca is not here, there's kind of a lot to get to again in this news day for a Monday. Obviously, there was a lot happening over the weekend, a lot of games, a lot of shocking scores, a lot of favorable scores for us, which makes today's game even more important. So we'll kind of like talk about that as well. Join in, chime in, and fill in for Mecca this morning because definitely don't want to be doing all the talking. So let's get to the news first. Obviously, the biggest thing over the weekend, I think, for Liverpool was kind of like what Klopp said. Two main things to cover over here. One, he talks about Naby Keita. Obviously, he's going to be asked about Keita every freaking press conference from now on. So he's asked about Keita, and selling him is not possible. But then he says if he is sold, he would definitely be replaced and a replacement will be brought in. So to go with this, and I think this is like the bigger discussion here. And I know in the past we've always talked about Klopp maybe being on the same page as the club and saying we don't want to just spend money and get somebody like some of the thought that we had was, he's waiting for the right guy. He wants his guy, and he doesn't want to just buy a guy for like 15, 20. Even if the guy he wants is 80, he wants to wait for that guy, kind of like what we did with Van Dijk and stuff. And you can kind of praise that. You can kind of criticize that. It's kind of like done both over here in American Scouser. Depends on who you talk to. But so he mentions that there is issues regarding like the spending. He almost like hints at it. So he says now we have more injuries than we would have imagined, and now it would be cool. I wish I could throw in the German accent here, but I'm not going to even go there. It'd be cool to have a new midfielder, and of course, but for now, and then we don't know when the boys come back and the situation changes constantly. There's the important bit right here. You can just not do that. And then there's another fact. I'm assuming we as in his team, are not in charge of what we can spend. That's the situation, and we get told things, and then we deal with that. Alan, good morning. Alan is with us to save the day because God knows Mecca isn't. I'm going to keep. And now I have to do all the Brendan Rodgers bashing myself to fill in for him as well, I guess. But so going back to the Klopp thing, I think this is kind of an important deal because it's signals a little bit that Klopp maybe does want somebody brought in, but perhaps he's told, hey, I mean, we can get that guy. That's not a big deal. But then you should forget about Bellingham or whoever else we're after that we want to make like a big money offer on. That's kind of how I read this. It could not even be that. It could be like, no, man, there's no money to buy a new midfielder. You have the squad. People will get better. Don't worry about it or something like that. But Alan says, who's Brendan Rodgers? Not that we're bashing him, but but mind you, it would be a great day for him to be here, Mecca, and bash Brendan Rodgers, because between him and Lampard, I felt like there was a race this weekend in terms of who's gonna get canned first, and everything gets the equalizer. So I think it pushes Fat Frank a week behind, and Brendan is like leading the gang over there. So going back to Klopp's thing, I think this kind of like signals a little bit of trouble, right? And the other part I don't like is the fact that, we're talking about Keita too much. It's a dude that doesn't respond well to being the focus, I feel, over time. He feels like he plays his best when he kind of plays within the team and doesn't like try to force himself to create or show himself and plays within the system. I just worry on a game like today, for example, if he's out there, and I hope he's out there because, like I say, his pressing against, I mean, if you go back to last year's United game, for example, his pressing was key. So I'm kind of hoping he's out there today. But I just don't like all this talk about him. So let's hope it's not another year. It's not as distracting as the Mo conversations, probably, because he's not a starter or a regular starter, I should say. But still, it's just something that you don't want club to be answering every week. And in 2-3 weeks, he's just gonna snap on somebody anyway, saying, "Hey, we've talked about this and stuff like that." But then sometimes when club does that, he throws out something bit more scary or bits more than he should. I mean, he plans everything he says, let's face it, but still sometimes he'll say something that will even like stir up more conversation. I think he did it last year with Mo, where he got suckered into saying something which became a conversation for another freaking 3 weeks for the media to feed off of. But it's interesting. Would love to get your guys' take on this in terms of what you guys feel. I know a lot of people are going to be like, see, the FSG is not back in club. I think this is kind of like the arrangement that they've had all along, where they're going to get only so much fund. It's not going to be Manchester City like oil funding going on over here. So that was probably the understanding. But I don't know if this is a situation where he's like, hey, man, here's an exception, and like FSG is shooting it down, or once again, like I say, he's saying, well, why don't we get somebody? They're like, well, I mean, we can go get him, but I would forget about spending 100 million on this guy next summer or something like that, or affecting next summer's spending or whatever the case might be. It definitely signals something that Klopp is not 100% cool with this. And I wonder how like reading something like this or listening to Klopp say that affects the team overall. Because we always talk about, I mean, my theory all along was, Klopp is very big on, I mean, it's not a theory, it's a fact that he's very big on like team building, squad building, and all that kind of stuff, and how people like fit into the squad. And that's why he was not getting an emergency purchase. Now it sounds like he would be okay with an emergency purchase, but his hands are tied and he's not being given the go-aheads. Other news to kind of like take a peek at. I mean, this is nothing new, but as always, United is linked with a bunch of people. I know this Anthony thing has been going around for a while, but then again, so has De Jong, and doesn't look like that's happening. A lot of money Ajax is asking for him. It's going to be interesting to see if United fork that out. We'll talk about that on the way, like as we leave today, as we kind of like look at the United game that we have. But the Glazers are kind of like doing some moves to kind of offset the anger. And I think they've kind of succeeded. Like over the weekend, you look at certain things with Casemiro coming in, the anger level has gone down a little bit. So, and if you can bring that anger, I mean, there are going to be some people, I mean, we have this with FSG, right? There are some people who are just looking to get angry at FSG at any given situation. Doesn't matter. So there's that group. But there's another group that you can control a bit more, where you can kind of like throw them something and they were like, they're not that bad or something like that. If they're getting dressed like to go to the protest, and then they see they're like, we got Casemiro, I don't know, it is raining out, and then maybe like do the protest or like kind of like join into the crowd that's more like strictly Glazers out. So if they do this Anthony thing, I feel like that's why they would do it. They would do it to shut that crowd out a bit more. Before the game today, there are more like protests expected. They've been kind of like planning on this, regardless of the Casemiro move, after obviously the results they've gone into the season with. And I know Klopp has talked about that if it delays the game or if the game gets postponed somehow, we should get the 3 points. And I agree with him. And I know obviously United fans probably are not happy hearing that, or maybe some other fans who ordinarily don't like Klopp or something like that. But I think he's right. I mean, you got to control your own crowds, and if you can't, then you got to face the consequences. I mean, this happened last year where the game was postponed. I don't know, like what was it, like over an hour or so? I can't remember exactly how long, but it definitely was postponed, like delayed, I guess I should say. And it looks like there's going to be more of this year. They were trying to block a bus, but it wasn't actually our bus. We had a decoy bus. It was just like a bad spy movie. But either way, the game got on and we kicked their ass. But I don't know if the same thing is going to happen this year, or they will find a way to control. I mean, it's like they know it's coming, so they can't be like, oh, we weren't prepared for this. We didn't know so many people hated the Glazers, so they can't really do that. So I'm hoping they have things in place to kind of prevent it from happening in the first place. But we will find that out in a few hours over here. The kickoff is in actually 6 hours, less than 6 hours over here. Obviously, over the weekend, Chelsea probably had the worst results, I would say, while City comes back to draw with Newcastle, but it still drop points at this stage. I think it's the same, same thing we talked about with Liverpool. I mean, a draw is almost like a loss at this point with the bar that's set high. I think one thing that we're going to see over the next maybe 3-4 weeks is the bar still that high, or is this World Cup thing going to affect certain things where there's going to be more injuries, or teams are not going to be as crisp as the quality teams are not going to be as crisp. But I mean, fair play to Newcastle. They really took it to City, and I think that's the way to beat City. But at the same time, you got to give fair play to City too. They did come back on them, and honestly, it looked like they were going to take the 3 points at the end too. And after being down 3-1, I would have been crushed if they got the 3 points out of that. So it's good to see that they got a loss of points over there. Kind of opens the door for us and makes the game today more important. But going back to Chelsea, Tuchel says Chelsea won't resort to panic signings. I mean, it's not like they haven't done signings. Sterling obviously has been a flop so far. I mean, to be fair, he did have his chances this weekend. I mean, what was that, like the 52nd or something like that? You could have giving Chelsea the lead, and a couple of situations, obviously one goal taken off with VAR, but yeah, he has not made the impact that they thought he would. And there's so many question marks on that team. I think Cucurella is a good addition, but at the same time, they have way too many questions on, like Ziyech, for example, was out there. Well, he was supposed to be sold. There's a lot of rumors about Pulisic. It's a big mess. Jamie says, drinking for two too much in double chocolate milk flavored gin and coffee. Yeah, that sounds like a throw up in a mug. But yeah, so we're going strictly coffee this morning. No tea, which, under the cover of tea, Mecca always had something fancy in there, like mint cream and crap like that. But gin, alcohol, moonshine, you name it, the guy drank it. I prefer the coffee every morning. And actually, I have the really strong coffee this morning because it's Monday and not a lot of sleep. And let's get going. It's a big day coming up. Yeah, Alan says Genie did break his leg. I know the feelings on Genie are pretty mixed with the fans, and I don't know. I don't see it as bad. I mean, it's not like he had a huge. What he said after he left is the only thing that kind of rubs me the wrong way. Otherwise, I have no problem with a guy trying to get his last contract and bank. And people are like, well, lucky he's not already have the money. I mean, which one of us over here, even if you work with a company for 15 years, we're about to retire 2 years to go, and somebody comes in with a ridiculous contract, we'll be like, I guess, because you would just bank on your way out. And that's what we're talking about over here. And that's what he did. What he talked about the fans and stuff afterwards, he was getting, I mean, if he's complaining, Jesus Christ, what would Hendo say? Because I don't remember as much Genie hate in that midfield when everybody was complaining about that midfield of him, Milner, and Hendo. So just God forbid what Hendo would say then if that was the case. But apart from that, I'm okay with him leaving. I don't think he made too much of a drama out of it, like I say, until after he left. But yeah, kind of sad to hear that. I'm not following him. There's still people following Mane's every move, what he had for breakfast and stuff. It's hey man, thanks for your service. I'll see it in the stat sheets, and I'm just gonna move on. I'm not gonna be happy that I don't know who they beat 7-0 this weekend. I mean, it's Bayern. I mean, I could probably go out there instead of Mane, and maybe we beat him 4-0 instead of 7-0. But still, it's not something that I kind of keep chasing. I mean, Emre Can and stuff like that. I mean, I kind of see how these guys are doing, but I'm not rooting for or against people who left the way they did without any trouble. I mean, Emre was the same way, similar to a Genie situation where he felt he could get some high wages, and hell, he did. I mean, it might not have been a great career move in terms of on-field success and trophies and things like that. But like I say, when somebody says, hey man, I want my monies, it's okay. I mean, if you're picking that, that's fine. Not root for or against them. I mean, I'll follow them and see what they're doing or whatever. So I was kind of sad to hear about the whole Genie thing, because I feel, yeah, I'm sure he regrets that move himself. I don't know if his wallet does or the bank account does, but I'm sure he does career-wise, because that PSG experiment kind of blew up, and then now he comes to Italy. He looked like he was like, okay, finally a place where, a bit more, like re-energized maybe, because I think the whole PSG thing was a bit demoralizing for him. And then he goes there, and now this happens, and I don't know how long he is out, but obviously a broken leg, surgery and things like that, especially at that age, it becomes harder and harder to get back. So, but going back to the news, here you go, like another, Mbappe Nets hat trick in PSG route. I mean, it's just like those leagues. I don't even know if the fans over there like kind of like get, we have a game today, right? In like less than 6 hours. I worry as a lifestyle, so I'm already worried. There's a lot of things to be worried about this game, to be fair, but I would have worried it either way. So I can't blame the game for it. But every game there's some kind of an excitement, there's some kind of an anticipation and stuff. I don't know if like PSG is like, getting up for like half these games and being excited about taking on some of these teams, because it feels like it's a matter of how many. I mean, growing up as a Fenerbahce fan as a kid, it was similar. It was almost like waiting for the first goal, because once the first goal came in, you were like, game over, and then it's going to be like 3 or 4 or whatever, and that was the only stress. Like when like Bayern fans and PSG fans, I think that's why the Champions League is such a big deal, because the other one is not as much of a challenge, and it's almost a given that you're going to win it. It's more like a news if you do not win. So I just don't know how that works. I mean, that's one thing I like about the Premier League is no game is easy. No game is a guaranteed 3 points. It feels like, I think Mecca was talking about this while he was sipping his gin last week, where, even if it's towards the end of the season and they're, a team is like 13th or whatever, they're going to give you a really tough away game, or they're going to really go at it if they come to Anfield. And I don't think I get that sense as much when teams go against like team like Bayern and PSG. You have to bear in mind, it has to be a feeling where, it's going against Goliath. So you're like, if we nick something, it's good. If we don't, that's what everybody was waiting. Good morning, Leo. Happy match day it is. So let's talk about the match a little bit, because I know tonight's podcast, obviously, we'll talk a lot about the match with the boys. Actually, we only have Gally this week. Bickler is somewhere at the airport right now, probably mad at something, I'm sure, but God knows what. And then we had the Premier League show that we're recording tonight, where we talk about a lot of the games. That'll be actually on our YouTube channel tomorrow. If you have not subscribed, what the heck you're waiting for? Just head on over to YouTube, American Scouser, and subscribe. Chris is with us this morning as well. Good morning, Chris. So the game today, man, I worry about this because a win has become very crucial. The Newcastle score yesterday against City has opened the door, so it's made it even more important. But and we can laugh at Everton, and why the hell not? They only have a point now, and they almost lost at home to Nottingham Forest. They had to squeeze that through. And I mean, we've been yelling at United. I mean, we're in a situation where if we lose today, we'd be under United, and we'd be almost, I don't even know if we'd be in the relegation zone, or we'd be really mighty close to it. So it's kind of like an important game in that sense, not because standings count as much. I guess we'd be down to like 16. We'd be right above Everton. You know what that means. That's not a good thing in any way. So, but winning today would kind of like bump us up in there. I think it changes the entire mood for the season in a lot of the ways, where everybody's kind of like bummed with the start, which now the Crystal Palace result, especially, both of them, the teams that we probably thought should have been, at least on paper. I mean, we just talked about this, right? There's no easy games, but at least on paper, both those games should have been like easy 3-point games. And now we're looking at it. Fulham obviously looks a lot better. I know they almost choked away the lead, but then they get the 3 points. And you can see how good Crystal Palace is, or maybe you can see how bad Villa is. But definitely Crystal Palace is going to have a good season. That's a solid team Vieira has put over there. So winning today away at United would be huge. Put us back in the discussion, maybe get our, mojo a bit. And as these guys come back and as we get healthier, kind of build some momentum. This is going to be a really odd year just because of the World Cup. So it's going to be very important to see how teams come back from the World Cup. And sadly, the start was going to be tricky, right? We kind of knew these first 4 or 5 weeks were going to be a test just because, especially with Klopp and his crew, like the buildup of preseason and stuff like that. With the preseason, that's a lot shorter, people coming from a shorter rest. It was going to be even more challenging than a regular beginning of the season would be, because these guys are not really 100%, and we kind of go off of that 100%, right? I mean, in terms of our style of play relies on that fitness level and everything like that. So good to have Bobby back today. I do expect to see Keita out there, or we could just go with a very safe midfield. And I don't know if I will be definitely against that, to be honest with you. Going with a safe midfield of Fab, Hendo, who was in full training, and Milner. Kind of like a beefy midfield that's going to constantly win balls. And we know our front three, when they go at, especially United's defense, they should be fine and get eventual scores as long as we control the ball and don't give them any counters and stuff like that. For United, and that's like probably why I'm semi-worried, I don't know, it's probably more because it's a United Liverpool game. I think if it was any other team as wounded, as miserable as they are, I probably would not worry as much. But you know how they say, like, throw the form out the window kind of games, like us against United, us against Everton. I kind of get that sense. Getting an early goal will be very important. That is a very fragile team. So it will be very important to get that early goal. And then if we do get an early goal, I can definitely see a game similar to last year's game where we just like kick their asses, and people started that protest last year at halftime. So I'm hoping more of that. But at the same time, I question this year how fragile we are. So conceding a goal early could have the same effect on us. I would really worry about that. Like I say, I worry the way it is. Chris says, I'd like to see Naby in there after the match he had at the old trash can. I think so. I agree with that, Chris. I think, I think I talked about this last week with Mecca. I mean, Keita is that kind of guy that has certain games really suit him and certain games that do not. So that's why I don't know if he's ever, unless he improves his play, his physicality, and kind of like a little bit of the awareness sometimes too. I don't know if he's like a starting 11 guy at all times, like regardless, throw him in there like we do with Fab or maybe even like Hendo. But there are certain games that really suit his play. And I think these United games are one of those, like United, Leicester, guys who insist. I would like to see him against Arsenal, for example, teams that do insist on building from the back, regardless of what's going on. Like, this is what we do, regardless of how good your press is. And those teams, especially most of them with our pressure, are not going to be able to build that play. Is the confidence I have, especially when you have somebody like Bobby out there, Keita out there, like Diaz and stuff. So with our pressing, I think we will win the ball up top and be able to convert in the score. Alan says, I wonder if Brandon will be Old Trafford. Not that I'm bashing him. Yeah, I mean, Maka is really missing out on opportunity. He could get his 10 Brandon bashings in one morning over here after the weekend they had. And yeah, they're in the relegation zone with 1 point. I mean, I know it's early in the season. It's only been like 3 weeks. And United is only at 2 games right now. But hopefully, once we beat them, this is going to be the final standings the way it is. Actually, they will be, if we beat United today, they would be dead last because the goal difference is in West Ham's favor. But I don't think a lot of people would have said after 3 weeks, Leicester City, Manchester United, and West Ham would be the bottom 3. I mean, when we did our, preseason previews in the Premier League show, we actually thought West Ham would be challenging for 4, definitely for a Europa spot. And they still can. They have the team. They just don't have the play right now. But, like Leicester down there, United down there, I mean, we knew both would have their struggles, but not like this. It's just not a good start at all. Everton, I think we kind of saw it coming. But they have a really tough schedule coming up. I think we talked about this last week to see if Fat Frank would make it to October. And honestly, this weekend's game against Nottingham Forest should have been one that's at least 3 points for them. And they didn't even get 3 points. They freaking salvaged the point from that. So leave alone not getting 3 points. They pretty much salvaged. So I think that was not as much of a surprise, but the schedule they're going into now for Everton, that had to have been a 3-point game, and it is not. So it's going to be, maybe Fat Frank will be gone by October and beat out Brandon Rodgers. Not that we bash Brandon Rodgers in the morning show over here. Chris says Nico broke West Ham spirit. West Ham spirit looks just broken to start with. I don't know what the ordeal is. It's kind of a, like, they don't have Antonio. Is the insistence on Antonio I am not getting, because I don't think he's giving them what they need. They have a lot of like good guys behind, but I just don't understand the persistence there. The new dude Skamaka, I mean, I think with, you know, if they provide some support to him, they have a lot of good pieces there. Bowen is nowhere near where he was. I know, you know, Gally and Bickler are huge Bowen fans, and he was linked before, and I think he would fit the system. But you can kind of see, I mean, that's like the thing that happens with wingers, right? Sometimes they get into this funk, and they're not themselves for a few weeks, or like for even like a few months. And I think he's in that, and he was so crucial to what came up from that team. And I think it's kind of like exposing, when that press and that running up top is not there, it kind of exposes Suchek and Rice to be not maybe that top tier duo that we thought they were. Or it doesn't matter how top tier you are if the guys in front of you are not pressing or like doing the work, I guess. But yeah, it's shocking to see West Ham and United and Leicester City down there. It's odd. And hey, I'll take it. Hopefully we'll have United really secure that dead last place today. I think that would be so, like, that would make it even sweeter to beat United than look at the standings to see how closer we got, and then take a peek at where United is, and dead last. That would be open up a whole new can of worms over there. Not that there are not worms crawling all over the damn place, but it would make it even worse. It would make it even more entertaining, and it would probably force them to make even more rash signings that are overpriced, which kind of like digs them a bigger hole, and rinse and repeat. So I am hoping for a 3-1. Throw your in the comments, throw your predictions for today's score. I am going for like a 3-1 win, and I'm hoping it's easier than even that scoreline shows. Like we get the 3-0 lead and then kind of like slow things down, kind of like we did when we had the 5-0 lead. Really, we kind of like stopped really going at them. We were like, you know what, yeah, it's just, let's not beat up on the little brother any more than we have to. But I'm hoping for a 3-1 win. It would be huge to get to the 5 points, close the gap with City to 2. We'll probably talk about Arsenal in the Premier League show too. I don't know. I mean, they look good. I don't know if they're going to keep going how they're. Like I say, that's one of those cases where week 3 is a bit too early to kind of like get too thrilled about somebody and stuff like that. But it will be interesting to see how they keep going. But City is still the main target, and cutting that lead down to 2 points will kind of, I think, or I hope, will get the panic mode out of the fans a little bit, because I do sense, I probably have it a little bit over myself, but like a little bit of what the hell is going on, kind of a panic, knowing it's going to be hard to catch up. But like I say, and we'll talk about this more throughout the week, but this whole World Cup throws a curveball to the whole ordeal, and it's going to be important. A team like City, who always kind of like cruises, like once they get going, especially in the second half of the season. I know they stumbled for about like a month or so last year, but and they just lost Ake, I don't know for how long. So that center back duo, I wish it was after the 31st, so they'll probably go this weekend by like a 80 million center back, but that's a different story. But let's hope for 3 points. Let's hope for a Maka return so we can have some gin and hot chocolate on the show and bash on Brandon Rodgers. I'm saving it for him, hoping he can make it tomorrow. Thanks a lot, everybody, for joining today. Let's go get these 3 points. We'll see you guys at the pre-match show, and, of course, tonight at 7 p.m. Central at Monday Night Podcast. Have a great day, guys.